Los nachos, amigos, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Record Breakers. I'm Petey, RAVE, your man with no plan. Here with me is my usual team. We've got Brett.
Ahoy hoy.
We've got Patrick.
I miss Drew.
And we don't have Drew. I miss Drew too.
Drew is out sick. He has a valid excuse.
He has a note from his doctor. He's excused from this episode for just for this episode, and we miss him. But we do have a guest. I am here at the CRTV studios, CosmicRadioTV studios. The good ship CRTV right here with none other than the head honcho here. Roberto Villegas, a.k.a. Vincent404. How you doing, Roberto?
Pretty good. You know, I don't ever think I've ever referred to the studios as the good ship anything.
Yes.
For some reason in my head, every time I hear the good ship, this tells you what kind of weird musical interests I have. I think of specifically a Chumbawamba song called The Good Ship Lifestyle.
Yes. Which
is like the fourth track on that album that no one ever made it beyond unless you truly, truly like the music, because you'd hear Tub Thumper, you'd then hear... I think Drip, Drip, Drip on track 3, and maybe the other track 2, whatever it is. And then if you kept going beyond that, you would actually hear like this weirder, cooler electronica stuff that no one ever listened to beyond unless you like that album like me.
All right, so we have Roberto.
I am in the small minority that has actually listened to all of Chumbawamba.
Dude,
it is kind of okay. Some of it.
I'm a huge fan of Chumbawamba. They are an
Good
underrated
Lifestyle
band.
Is track 5.
But
track 5, thank you.
Mary Mary is the best song on that record.
4 was something else. Sorry.
But we are not here to talk about Chumbawamba. We are here to talk about this week's album, which of course is provided by our guest Roberto. What album are you bringing us this week?
Well, I figured if I came on the show, I might as well nerdcore it up a bit. And when Petey asked me, hey, what album should I bring? The first thing that came to mind, the only thing that came to mind, because I guarantee a lot of people probably haven't heard it, part of your audience, that being, of course, the Mega Ran album, Forever Famicom.
Random, a.k.a. Mega Ran. Man, we met this weekend just to give a little... break the fourth wall. I'm here for South by Southwest.
Correct.
I know this is going to come out quite a bit afterwards.
Most likely.
Because we backlog episodes. But, I'm here for South by Southwest, and we actually hung out with Mega Ran.
Yes.
And his crew. Awesome people like Samus and a bunch of other people.
Storyville was there as well.
Storyville. Cool people. And this is a really cool, interesting album. I'll have to ask you guys, Brett, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
Mega Ran's played here locally a few times. I never went. I was offered the chance a couple times. The guy who lives right under me, rents a room from me, is a big fan of his. I've heard a little bit of his stuff just in passing, but it's really sort of outside my wheelhouse. But I did kind of know what I was getting into.
Mm-hmm. All right, Patrick, what did you expect coming into this album?
I did not know quite who Mega Ran was. I knew it was something in sort of that nerdcore hip hop and chiptune kind of world, but beyond that, I had never heard a Mega Ran song. So I didn't know, other than I know some of Roberto's music, of which this is like tiny bits of it, I guess.
But yeah, Roberto, what would you say are the themes and elements to this album?
So the big themes and elements, if I had to really compress it, I mean, ultimately, you kind of give a bit of history of the album. It actually was done by, of course, Mega Ran as well, or Random, depending on what era you know him as. And the producer would have been a person by the name of Kyle Murdoch or K. Murdoch. Make a long story short, they kind of teamed up to make this album, and their sort of themes behind it was kind of talking a little bit about their past and sort of how they do video games. And yes, a lot of the beats have video game inspired samples or are sampling directly from video games, but a lot of it is more of, I would say the theme is ultimately kind of treating it like, here's the video game stuff that we grew up with, but here is sort of our way of interpreting the world and how we grew up in the world. I guess that's the rough theme of Forever Famicom. It's kind of not a hard album to pitch, but it is a strange hip hop album to pitch to people.
Good. I think good. Old school nerdiness and old school hip hop kind of married
Yeah,
together.
I mean, ultimately, that's sort of where they came from because I've had Kyle on my podcast various times, and his sort of inspiration for hip hop is a lot of old school kind of hip hop, people like De La Soul and that older, 80s and 90s style of hip hop, which I tend to love. And the same thing with Random. He has that kind of same sort of lyrical style of older stuff and tries to ape that, or not ape that, but be that. And so when they teamed up to make the album, it was kind of fun. I know the actual backstory how they teamed it up, so I won't really spoil it, but it's a fun story for sure.
Yeah.
This all came about.
Brett, what would be the themes elements that caught your attention?
I mean, along with the storylines about video game characters, one thing that really stood out is this is a very positive message based hip hop act. Like there is not a bit of negativity in this album, and that really stands out in a genre, not necessarily this subgenre, but there's very, very little boastfulness. There's very little there's no malice involved. This is fun music for fun people by fun people. That you can definitely tell that that this isn't an ego album. This is a fun, wholesome, for the most part, album.
Yeah.
God, it's funny. I wanted to comment on that so bad. It's if you notice, there's not even a single curse word, and that's purposeful. I asked Raheem, or now I call him his first name. That was part of the purposeful thing, is to make it kind of that approachable. It's so funny that you kind of caught that, Brett. I'm glad to hear that.
Patrick, what elements, what themes and elements caught your attention about the album?
I feel like it's an interesting blend of hip hop and with like this splash of chiptuniness. But not. It's definitely not a chiptune record. It's definitely a hip hop album, and I like that they weren't just referencing old video games for the sake of doing it. They were talking about how it fit into their childhood and their lives and them growing up, and that sort of telling stories in poetry is what hip hop has always been, and usually very personal ones. And there was a lot of, clearly these were a story from childhood expanded into a song that happened to contain, a video game from, the late 80s and early 90s that clearly these guys were enjoying. And, I played when I was that age.
A little bit like how the 70s show wasn't about the 70s. It just happened to be in the 70s.
It wasn't like an album dedicated to video games. It was just, this was part of our childhood and therefore needs to be part of an album.
Yeah, definitely. Roberto, what would be some of the key tracks, some of your favorite tracks off the album?
God, that's a hard question, because ultimately, I if you ask me which tracks I like, I pretty much like them all. But usually, whenever it comes to anything done by Mega Ran, I always tend to go towards the more lyrical things. Again, because I know a lot of the backbeats, I know a lot of the video game stuff, and that's always the hook for a lot of people. For me, it's become more or less the song. So if I have to think of the key tracks, ultimately, Dream Master is a key one. It's probably was the first one I had heard off the album, but it's definitely the one that has stuck with me as the years go on. And I've heard Mega Ran perform it live about many a times. I have been part of the chants many a times. But I love that song a lot because it's kind of cool to hear it. It's kind of, almost like the backstory of a geek and sort of this, how it is that you sort of process the world. I've always loved that one. Forever, of course, but that's because A, I love the backbeat of being Earthbound, but B, I again love the lyrics about it. But the one that a lot of people don't really talk about, that I tend to play whenever I need to kind of get pumped up, whenever I need to get back to being motivated of doing things creatively or getting into everything that I need to do, I'll actually play Epoch, specifically because the hook for that is, my time is now, my moment is here, I don't know any fears, better open your ears. And so it's this kind of track for me that whenever I need to get in that motion of like, all right, it's time to get synced, time to get centered, time to get to work on whatever it is I need to get to work on, I will have a tendency of playing that song just to get my mind into this, ready to fight the epic battle against the creativity or the, writer's block. And I'll play that right away as my way of sort of getting myself pumped. So I would say those three key tracks are my favorite. There are plenty others on the album that I love for various reasons. But those three would be the ones for sure.
Oh, yeah, we all know the feeling of having to like pick out. Oh, which couple of tracks do we pick?
Well, it's not so much the couple tracks. It's just it almost
you love the whole album.
Yeah, so it's almost like it's hard, and so
it's a thing that comes
for
out.
sure.
But yeah, and there's also really cool tracks like for the gamers, which I love with N80, who's a great guy who many people refer to as dual core, even though he is one half of dual core.
Yep.
In 80. He's a cool dude.
And of course Schaefer the Dark Lord.
Schaefer, who's awesome. Brett, what would be some of the key tracks for you that caught your attention?
And I feel the pain. This is an album that is a complete album. This is not a track by track album. But if I was going to pick out a couple of high moments for me, I really like 2K10, just because it brings a little bit of the obscure, like I like the it's kind of like how sometimes Family Guy gets a laugh out of somebody because I know what they're talking about. Well, I'd like the hearing about my buddy Troy is turned into a pile of goo. I was there for that game, but I enjoy the fact that they put that to words. That was great. Double Dragons is a really, really fun track. But overall, the thing that really hit me was Dream Master. The music in that game, it really I remember getting that game. My mother brought it home for me the weekend it came out. I don't know why or how, what I did that was good for my mother to spend that much money at that time when we didn't have a whole lot of money, and I played the crap out of that game. And it's such a great premise, and they really build a good song off of that. I mean, they had a really good set of backbeats. They knew what they were doing and how they were going about laying down these tracks, and they picked some really good beats to go over. I mean, this is they did the Lord's work, I guess. This is not easy.
Yeah. That is the awesomeness that is K Murdoch. He's famous for another band called Panacea. And he's just an impressive producer. I'm sorry if I'm jumping in, but just like I'm hearing Brett talk about this, like that's anything K does is like amazing. But I'm glad you caught that too.
I'm going to make sure to seek out anything K Murdoch is
Panacea. Just get
whatever
your
he's doing. It's like how I felt about Mad Lib. I always look out if something is Mad Lib plus somebody, I'm going to pay attention to that. And now K Murdoch and anybody, I'm going to pay attention to that. Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
I think we all like Dream Master.
Yes.
My personal like of it was I love story songs. Anytime you tell a story in a song, I like it from folk music to hip hop.
Like wood.
I love that. I don't know why I love a story song, but I do. And this, like the vibe you get from it, it is like if you took chiptune and G-funk and put it in a blender together, and it comes out to be perfect. Like it has like very much an early 90s hip hop vibe plus chiptune and plus, really, cleverly chosen music. And it was a really good story song. And I love those. Forever was fantastic. Really good. And I think Brett sort of touched on this. Hip hop is sometimes difficult to approach for an upper middle class suburban white kid. It just because so much of it comes from a very different world. But this allows you, because of this, being a person who grew up playing, video games and, who has an NES and a Super NES and all that stuff still over there. Like it is a common theme shared by two people who grew up in different places. Although guy's Pennsylvania, he's from Philly. He went to Penn State, which is up the road. We've probably been to the same bars before. But he came from a different life than I did. But we share this sort of common childhood, enjoyment, and this album allows you to kind of see bits of his different life mixed with something we have in common. I thought that was it was unique and different. It was, this is a lot of nerdcore tends to be kind of its own genre separate from hip hop, where it just sort of contains rapping, but the music tends to be very different and it tends to be kind of on its own little island. Whereas I feel like this is the bridge in between, where this is traditional hip hop. Yeah. The subject matter just happens to be happens to have 6 shots of nerd thrown into it.
That's
And I
what
like
I love about Mega Ran in general is that he's a solid lyricist already, and he works with really solid producers, and a lot of those producers are they are hip hop people as well, and it's really cool when you see that bridge, because you're right, nerdcore is a sort of separate thing. I mean, you take someone like an MC Frontalot or MC Lars, and they have this certain style and certain stuff they talk about, which I can relate to, but you couldn't necessarily play it to somebody that might know a more traditional hip hop stuff. Whereas this, I could show that off to somebody and they go, "Wow, that's who is this again?"
Yeah.
And they start looking more into it, and they start getting more into the whole nerdcore scene because of that.
Like, it's a good.
And I'm definitely on the I'm going to go seek out more K Murdoch stuff, because this is what he does. I'm interested.
After this, I'll give you guys some links. Don't worry, I'll give you guys some links and stuff.
Spotify, help me.
And I have, and I'm looking forward to actually popping in and listening to the latest album that he worked on with Storyville called Soul Veggies.
Soul Veggies, yeah, that's cool the big one too.
Which everybody should check out.
Oh, yeah.
But let's go back around the horn. Brett, what would be your conclusions about the album overall?
I mean, if you know the kind of music that I normally bring to the show, the kind of music that I tell people that I'm into, on the show, you probably wouldn't expect me to be as into this as I am. But this is a tight album. It's produced very well. Everything is packaged up and clean. It's tight. The production, everything that was done to the level that they wanted to have it. There's nothing that you can hear. They're like, man, I bet they wish they did this or that. This is a very clean album. And there's a lot that I can seek out in this album, even though it's not my regular, meat and potatoes. But like, you won't know until you listen to it. Whether you're into this or not, listen to it once. It doesn't hurt. Give it a try. The first taste is free.
Yes. Patrick, what would be your conclusions about the album overall?
If you like hip hop, you should listen to this record. If you like nerdcore, you should listen to this record. If you're just the type of person like me who wants to hear something that he hasn't heard before, like this is the right amount nostalgia and classicness, but without being just a rehash of something from the past. It's unique. It's well constructed. As Brett said, it was produced extremely well. Mega Ran can rap. Like I don't know if we talked about that enough. Guy has flow.
No,
and that is like there's a lot of rappers who get really famous who aren't actually good at rapping. Mega Ran can play the game. Like
no, that's the greatest thing. If you've never been to a Mega Ran live show, there's one thing he always does. It's he freestyles. The closest thing you can get on that album to what a freestyle is like is Epoch, and that's as close as you get. And that's like a pale comparison.
Yeah.
Because if you've never been to one, you could essentially have an object in hand, and he will work it into the freestyle, and it's this amazing thing that you really truly realize how skillful he is and how tight he is on stuff. Because it's funny you bring that up, because he is like this beautiful rapper in terms of being able to whip in all the lyrics he needs and all the stuff he needs and get it all together in this very tight, solid, awesome package that just I've not heard in a while from other rappers for sure.
Yeah. So it's a perfect bridge of a gap from like nerdcore to alternative hip hop or to more stuff like that. But yeah, I'll let you let the last word. What would be your conclusion about the album overall?
Overall, I'm going to say this. If you're in hip hop, listen to this album, much like Patrick said, if you're in nerdcore, listen to this album. If you're pretty much into music, listen to this album, because already just knowing the fact that I know Patrick's not into hip hop traditionally. I know he likes some hip hop. I've not checked Brett's musical interest, but it's already becoming apparent that he's not the biggest of hip hop guys. And already these two are like, this is amazing. This is tightly produced. This is great. Who is the producer on this? K Murdoch? I'm going to check out more of his stuff. Already hearing that is a sign that says this album is pretty much approachable by anybody and everybody.
And go see them live.
That's an entirely different thing. My final thoughts are, for me, this was an important album because I'd gotten into Mega Ran before, and I definitely liked his original album, his kind of debut album, Mega Ran, and I've had the chance of meeting him, of having him on the podcast, of talking to him, of hanging out with him on just sort of a personal basis. And what I like about the guy in general is that he's a genuinely good person and a genuine person. That doesn't always happen in music. And so for me, a lot of what I put into Forever Famicom is a lot of things I almost put into my fandom of Mega Ran and sort of all the albums he does. Because a lot of the themes that we're talking about today pretty much carry over to his other albums as well, in terms of his singles and sort of other songs. And he approaches it that way. And I think the last and final thing I can say is just it's a great album for people that tend to like genuine and real things.
Yes.
Because it definitely comes from a place of honesty. And I think that's what appealed to me the first time and what continues to appeal to me as I continually listen to this album and other albums by him.
Sincerity.
Yeah.
The sincerity, which is perfect. But yeah, that's our thoughts on the album. Now we get to our main event of the evening. We get to our haiku reviews. And now, hey, let's see. Who starts? Brett, I'll let you start. What is your haiku?
Just some simple dudes. Best of game tunes on display. Positive message.
Nice. Patrick, what is your haiku?
Blending ideas from old school hip hop and games, well executed.
Of course, now I have my haiku. Nerdcore prodigy, tapping into nostalgia with great skill and flow. And of course, last but not least, Roberto, what is your haiku?
Okay, hopefully I got the count right. This album is a Nerdcore super mega team up for all ages.
Nice.
There you go.
Woo. Take that, Kaz.
Beat Kaz.
That's right. Kaz. Yeah, our poet.
The winner is you.
He gets the shit every week.
So
but
every
we
week.
still love you.
Just know that Kaz's haiku's count was more like his ideal body type.
Okay.
It was more like 34, 26.
Well, that's why I asked, because the thing is, as an English major, formerly, or as formerly, like I lose my degree just by not doing it. No, as that,
I've
like I
lost so many degrees.
I'm like,
Yeah. Just know that there's always. All right, let's not harp on Kaz. We love you, Kaz.
Yes.
We beat him.
Petey, what do you got for us? I'm curious. I haven't heard. Yet.
So of course, that's it for our thoughts on Random, aka Mega Ran. He's a cool dude, great music. Go check him out. Look him up all over the place. Of course, that you can find on the Spotify playlist. If you haven't already listened to it, check it out on there. Listen to, play Record Breakers the home game. On that Spotify playlist is, of course, next week's album, and that's my album. It's going to be interesting. We're going to end up, I don't know how the key track segment is going to work with this, but it's going to be The Prodigy, or just, Liam Howlett of The Prodigy, but under The Prodigy banner with The Dirt Chamber Sessions Volume 1. Dirt Chamber Sessions Volume 1. It's going to be an interesting album to talk about, but that's next week. You can check it out on the Spotify playlist. But that's it. You can find us all over the internet. Roberto, what do you got going on?
Oh, I've got way too much going on, way more than I need to have going on. If you want to ever just follow anything I do, just hit me up on Twitter at Vincent404, or if you want to check out any of the podcasts I tend to do online, you can head on over to CosmicRadio.tv.
And of course, like I said, we're all over the internet. Patrick is at The Swagger. Brett is at HIBBARD, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew, though he's not here, he is still at XJuciferX. I'm at Petey Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Email us. We read it. It's easy to keep track of because nobody emails us. Email us. iTunes, Stitcher. Follow us, share, subscribe. The YouTube page, youtube.com/RABellyTV.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Whichever you like.
Huey versus Hootie.
Remember, it's an ongoing thing. Do you like Huey and the Blowfish or Hootie and the News? Who do you like? Huey and the Blowfish or Hootie and the News?
Okay, explain this. You got to explain this.
Just side
Hypothetical mashup.
Sight
band.
unseen.
Okay, yeah, explain
Chase, what's
the
your
thing.
front
Give me-
man?
hypothetical mashup names.
Hypothetical is it? But
Mashup bands.
okay, so when we say like Huey and the Blowfish, it would be we'd have Huey Lewis
and the
and the
Blowfish.
Blowfish.
Uh-huh.
And then Hootie
Or
and the
Hootie
News.
and the news.
The way this is going to be determined, and I'm going to give because it seems like there's two sides to this, but it's going to be determined by this, my opinion. What is each of their sides' lead track?
Well, tune in next week where I come up with a way elaborate story about I got
I'll make
homework
this
to do.
easy.
Yes. We're going to come up with that. He'll vote online. You can vote online. Hashtag Huey or Hootie. Vote on there. It's an ongoing thing. We'll do it forever. Because, why actually determine a winner when we could just do a gimmick forever? But that's it.
Yeah.
Follow, share, like, subscribe, do all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.
Bye, people.
I still miss Drew.